Hi, and welcome to the Teach and Learn Archive session 7. We are still with Teach Like a Champion, and we are moving on to technique 55, which is called the least invasive intervention, which is fixing problems or disruptions using the least invasive intervention to ensure that everyone can keep working. The rationale for this is that each time we start a lesson to address an issue, attention shifts, and attention is fragile, as we know. Learning stops, and sharp minds look for a substitute. So the overarching goal of least invasive intervention is to seek to make the behavioral correction as invisible as possible so that learning can continue. There are 6 levels of intervention. Intervention level 1 is called the non-verbal correction, which is exactly what it says. It's where the teacher will use a non-verbal signal to correct the behavior. So for instance, you might just tap your jumper if you wanted a student to take their coat off, or if you wanted the students to look at the board because they're looking elsewhere, then obviously you might give them the old point to the eyes and then point to the board sort of non-verbal signal. But the idea here is to do this during instruction, so don't stop teaching. So carry on teaching, but give that non-verbal instruction so you are not losing lesson time and attention is not shifting. Intervention level 2 is called positive group correction. And a few things there. It's very short, it's in the seconds. It's to the whole class, so nobody has been singled out. And it's framed in the positive, so something in the order of, I need to see everyone writing. And you might back that up with that non-verbal signal. Intervention level 3 is called anonymous individual correction. An example here might be that you start with that positive group correction, which is eyes up here. And then the anonymous individual correction might just be, I need 2 more sets of eyes. So you're waiting for those 2 more sets of eyes. You've not singled anyone out of the classroom. It sends a message to the whole class that you're waiting. And those are the 2 who've got time just to correct themselves. And again, you might boost with that non-verbal signal again. Intervention level 4 is called private individual correction. And the aim here is to keep the unwanted behaviors off stage. So some method might look like this. At an appropriate time in your lesson, you might give the class an independent task, and then you need to make an intervention as brief and private as possible. So you will wander over to the student, get down to their level, and probably whisper to them. And when you whisper to them, the whisper is to emphasize the change in behavior, but you emphasize purpose over power. What we mean here is that the wrong way to do it would say, I want you to do this because I told you to do it and I'm the teacher. That's emphasizing your power over them. That's likely to lead to conflict. Emphasizing purpose would be, I need you to do this, or we need to do this because you're part of this classroom and I want you to feel successful. I want you to do well today, etc. That's the emphasizing why we do it, for the purpose over the power. Also, it works much better if, as part of your classroom culture, you balance private individual correction, PIC, with private individual precise praise. And what I mean here is that there's a culture in your classroom where you are wandering over to students and quietly whispering to them, sometimes praise and sometimes correction. And in doing so, the students that you are going to correct are much more open to it because they're used to you wandering over to praise them as well. So that's a benefit. But also, if you have that culture where you can wander over students and quietly whisper those things, then the other students in the classroom aren't listening in so much, and you give the students receiving the correction a bit more dignity, I sense, in when they're having to be corrected. Intervention level 5 is called lightning quick public correction, and the aim here again is to limit the amount of time a student is on stage for something negative. So you're trying to limit that time, and you don't want to draw too much attention to them, but you want it to be very, very quick. So the tips here are: be as brief as you can, use positive framing again, so state what you want in the positive as opposed to what they're doing in the negative, and then try whispering it's very powerful if you whisper the correction, because it says publicly to everyone that I respect you because I'm trying to do this quietly. This kind of subconscious message which happens there. And then quickly, as soon as you've done it, then call the student's attention to something else so you can reinforce the positive norms. So back to the question that you're doing or back to the instruction you're doing. So you take them off stage as quickly as possible and prevent the opportunity for confrontation. Intervention on level 6 is called consequence, and in fact it's a totally different chapter in the book, so which is not going to be dealt with here, but some of the tips are just as beneficial when you're doing a consequence. So for instance, still seeking the least invasive intervention is recommending. For example, whispering in private is likely to be more beneficial than doing things loud and publicly. Obviously you can see where that could potentially lead to. So here is a summary slide of everything been through. So if it needs be, you might want to clip that and put it somewhere for you to refer to during the next couple of weeks as you're practicing it. And really, I'm going to leave you with two things. One is a challenge, is just to be mindful that when you are correcting behaviors this week, is to try and do that as invisible as possible. So try and practice that least invasive intervention. What's the least invasive way that you can get a student to change? It becomes a bit of an interesting challenge as you go through, and you can do it very, very subtly when required and if practiced. And then something to discuss as groups of teachers, departments and beyond as a school as a whole. First of all, what are the most common behaviors that need correcting in your classroom? Because I suspect that they're the same in other classrooms. That would be interesting to discuss. And then from there is what should be the non-verbal signal that we all use. So if we're having the same common behaviors, what non-verbal signal should we all use? Because we certainly shouldn't be using different ones. It's just a confusing message to students. And also, what should be the verbal signal that we should use? So again, we should be using the same language so that students are having a consistent message. So I will leave you there to discuss that.